next session, which is on leagues and endorsements. This session is presented by Probability Sports India Private Limited for the promoters of the T20 Mumbai League. We have a short video on the foundation of the league.
Every Mumbaiker who plays cricket nurtures this dream to play for India. Mumbai, the city where cricket is a religion. Mumbai, the city that has given India its cricketing legends. It is time to give back to the city a league of its own.
Probability Sports' philosophy and endeavor is to give a platform to the budding cricketers of Mumbai and showcase the talent.
Introducing T20 Mumbai, the inaugural edition. Launched amidst much fanfare, the league's first edition featured 6 teams representing Mumbai's 6 zones. T20 Mumbai.
हमें मुंबई का हमें क्रिकेट का
For 11 days, fans thronged the stadium in huge numbers and cheered for their favorite teams.
How about that? Look at that shot.
After 19 engrossing games, one champion emerged.
I'm so glad that it's a reality now. According to me, the response has been fantastic, and this was much needed for Mumbai cricket.
T20 Mumbai, a resounding success and a result of perfect partnership and teamwork by everyone involved. T20 Mumbai's second edition. It will only get bigger and better.
Our first panel in this session will be discussing laws, policies and practices impacting sports business leagues, sports leagues in India. I'd first like to invite Mr. Mustafa, Ghouse, the CEO of JSW Sports. Mr. G. Srinivvasan, Group Head, Marketing and Strategy, Reliance Sports. Mr. Desh Sekhri from NITI Aayog. Mr. Chaitanya, Divan, Senior Vice President, LawNK Private Limited. Ms. Aahna, Mehrotra, Independent Sports Law and Management Consultant. And this panel will be moderated by Ms. Nandan.
Thank you, Roshan. So I'll just cut straight into it. There's lots to discuss, and we have wonderful different perspectives from league operators, team owners, independent lawyers and advisors, as well as broadcasters. I don't know if there are any representatives missing, perhaps just the fan, and I'll play the role of that fan. But let's just cut straight to it in terms of looking at the future of leagues and the various stakeholders involved. And I'll come first to you, Desh. Talking about the relationship between leagues and federations. In many ways, leagues have replaced work that federations ought to have been doing, should have been doing. And federations seem to be enjoying this opportunity that some other private player is willing to take the risk, willing to take the responsibility. But relating back to the session we just had on expropriation, we've seen with the Premier Hockey League in the past, other leagues as well, what is the risk of the relationship between the league operator and the federation in leagues where those are two different entities, not like the IPL where the federation and the league operator are the same. What has been the history and what should we look at as things to watch out for and ways to buffer that risk going forward?
So I think the history is checkered at best. And recently I was working on a research project where I was looking at how many leagues have stood the test of time. And I think that fundamentally goes to the problem of what leagues are in India. We tend to have a major league before we have any sort of build up towards a grassroots program which gives you a deep talent pool and also ensures that you have numerous feeder players or feeder institutions that ensure that the depth and the sustainability of a league is ensured. And that's actually why I'm really happy that you've got representatives from across the board, because I think when you look at how the situation has evolved, a lot of people automatically, and Aahna and I were discussing this yesterday, what's evolved is that everybody wants to be the next IPL or everybody wants to be the next Kabaddi League. And they don't understand how much has gone into developing these leagues. It's not a fluke that Kabaddi is where it is today. It's not a fluke that the ISL has got the kind of outreach eclipsing any other league which exists out there in football today. And how JSW is developing players and how they're developing their teams. I mean, they're building fan engagement, which has never really been able to be developed to that extent, which is absolutely brilliant. But the problem is that the federations, I feel, in fact, I'm going to take the reverse stand, is that they shouldn't be involved with leagues. They should be involved purely from the development perspective. And half the problem that we have with the sustainability of leagues is that there's never a clear set of directives between the federations and the promoters. So when there's interference on both sides, and I'm sure Srini is going to either correct me or agree with me, but I think the ISL has managed to have an independent property and been able to develop their own systems, primarily because there isn't direct engagement from the federation.
Aahna, this being a reality, I think Desh has laid out what it would be lovely to have. But this being a reality, how do you advise your clients? And you have a number of them starting leagues, working, for example, with table tennis and other sports which are new. And often the federation, this is the first time they're encountering the commercial property of this nature, stature. People are still understanding how this works and how much money is in it, and very often happy that someone else is doing that testing. How do you structure contracts advising the league operator to buffer this risk, to look at medium to long-term risk of expropriation?
I think a good example of it would be to start with, the only other successful sort of league we had back in the day was badminton when it started in 2013. And in that case, when the fallout happened between the league owner and the commercial rights owner, the IP belonged to the commercial rights owner. So there was a huge battle between the federation and the company then, which said, I'm not going to give you the rights of IBL. So as much as the federation wanted to continue, in the name of the same property, they had no choice but to then establish a PBL in 2015. So I guess that was a huge learning curve in terms of now advising league operators that please, since you're making the kind of a commercial investment you're making, please continue to make sure that you own the IP. So I recommend models where there is no profit sharing per se with the federation, rather a fixed rights fee that you're giving to the federation so that the interference then becomes limited. that the federation is getting their due. But also the unfortunate reality is that some of the contracts that were negotiated back in the day, looking at the model of kabaddi, a lot of other sports, apart from cricket that is, a lot of federations now think that, they got a very cheap deal and they deserve a lot more money. So even though the contracts now don't allow any room for negotiation, but the federations in their own way try and make your life difficult, which I feel is sometimes unfair. Because the sport is anyways getting promoted, the players are benefiting out of it. If you're just making life difficult because you think that you deserve more money because you can do more for the sport, then I guess you should have done it all this while versus somebody actually stepping up and taking the responsibility of promoting the sport.
And one is that risk of someone saying, hey, I gave you a cheap deal, now I want it renegotiated. And the other is the inherent governance risk. After Lodha, I think we should expect pretty much every federation to go through this process. And one of the things that might happen is actually look back and anyone who actually theoretically should not have held office, and if you had executive decisions made, is that a risk we should be aware of and working on, or is that just a theoretical risk that decisions made in the past, which are grants of rights, could get reopened and...
I don't think things will have a retrospective effect. So anything that has to happen now will be for future contracts that will be negotiated, because at that point in time, of course, as a commercial rights owner, I did it in good faith because somebody was holding office, be it the president or be it the general secretary. Yes, of course, I hope that the commercial rights owner have gone through the constitution of the federation, who has the powers, because we faced a battle in volleyball wherein the president had given rights away to one party and the general secretary had given rights to another party, and they went to battle. Unfortunately, Anish is not here, otherwise he would have thrown light on it further. But, to avoid things like those, you must go through the constitution of the federation as to who actually has the power to give such rights. And, of course, I don't think there will be any sort of retrospective effect on contracts that have already been negotiated, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Srini, as sort of a stakeholder in a league where I think the relationship with the federation is closer, was that part of the role of just reducing regulatory risk and governance risk and then getting closer to the action and being able to actually have a longer term agenda? Because otherwise you're waiting for someone to grant you rights. In many cases, sanctions are given year on year. So you don't even know if the next year you're going to get a window to play sanction. But here you're able to actually pull out a larger agenda for that sport. So was that part of the strategy, or is that just sort of one of the advantages that has come from this type of relationship?
Honestly, I think it happened by accident. So while in running the ISL, the AIFF focuses on the regulatory aspect. They provide match commissioners, referees, etc., which is conditional to the game. Yeah. What we do is work with them to improve the overall ecosystem of football, which is starting right from, as the points were mentioned, straight from grassroots to developing centers of excellence to competition, improving the structure of domestic competition, and eventually the pyramid leading up right to the national team. So the whole structure needs to be robust, and the relationship with AIFF, like I mentioned, regulatory, we take part of. We take the lead on commercial, broadcast, promotion, path forward, what happens in the next 2-3 years, and 2-3 leading up to 10-15 as the case may be. So the idea is to improve. Both of us are working for the same cause, and the idea is to improve the overall ecosystem of football than focus on a league or a specific part of it.
So, but naturally, some amount of governance risk has been removed in this type of model.
As far as the federation is concerned, they do the governance. Okay. As far as the federation is concerned, as far as the governance of the league is concerned, we do have involvement of the AIFF on approving league rules, on approving guidelines, etc. They are as much as a part, but it's a very synergetic relationship, harmonious relationship.
And it's very interesting. And moving from that to the relationship of the league with the broadcaster, and if I may come to you, Chaitanya, do you find little bit too much now emphasis? It's almost like the broadcaster's obligation to make the league commercially sustainable. So suddenly the operator is no longer the person packaging this product and figuring out the business model. Everyone's just trying to package something that a broadcaster needs to buy. Do you find that people are often putting the cart before, I know it's a leading question, but the cart before the horse? And really, what are the different models we have in place, and what would attract a broadcaster's attention in terms of paying the rights fee separate even from carriage of that contract, of the content?
Can I talk for an hour on this? If you look at the current model, right, it's very similar to what the tech industry is possibly going through. A lot of startups, a lot of money flowing into new startups, and a lot of them coming in with the hope that we'll just sell out eventually to one of the big boys. And somewhere I think a lot of leagues, a lot of domestic properties are popping up with a single intention that we will find a broadcaster who's willing to fund it, and that's how we're going to make money. This isn't how it works globally. I mean, broadcast revenue is a big source of revenue, but there are other sources of revenues globally. There is obviously gate and fan and merchandise-led revenue. There is a massive amount of sponsorship revenue coming in. And these multiple sources of revenue is then what sustain a sports property, help it ride over unpredictability in any of these sources. And that's what really leads to strong sports properties. Unfortunately, in India, a lot of the other sources of revenue are non-existent. And that's why everybody is so dependent today on a broadcast model. What happens 2 years or 3 years down the line if suddenly broadcasters change their strategies and start doing things differently? Huge risk on that front, right? So I think it's important to now start thinking of where the next set of revenues are going to come from for all the sports that we are launching here in India.
But do you almost feel like some amount of pressure, and what is the lens you use for evaluating, okay, this is a property, number one, we're even willing to carry, and two, we're willing to pay for?
Two buckets. The first bucket is fairly obvious in terms of sports related and consumer related criteria. What are the popular sports? What do consumers want to watch? Are there heroes in that sport? Is the sport reasonably popular in terms of participation at a grassroots level? So that's all one bucket, if I can call it that. The second bucket is as important, is about, is there a shared vision, is there a shared understanding with the league operator and the federation about what are we trying to do and where do we see this partnership heading, and what is the time frame? I think that aspect is really important, and which is why we've been very selective in terms of what partners we want to work with in terms of an investment, a deeper partnership really. So where there is obviously clear vision, a shared vision, there is an understanding of the roles and the strengths that the respective parties bring to the table, and that I think is as important as using the sport parameters.
Srini, coming back to you and a little bit on the issue of the relationship with teams, and I'll move to Mustafa next. What is the relationship you have created with your franchisees, and as a commentator on other leagues which you're viewing, is there adequate education of the franchisees on the risks they're taking and equally the responsibilities to generate revenues? Do you feel like we have an enlightened franchisee base in India, and is that different for different sports, obviously?
I think the biggest thing that, as and when a league starts, the first caveat is do not try to mirror IPL. Everyone starts by saying, oh, they did this, so we will do this. Yeah, different, and as Chaitanya rightly pointed out, it's a function of consumer acceptance. Yeah, consumer consumption on what platform, in which region. Yeah, so it's a function of multiple factors. So coming to Bengaluru, it was a lot easier as far as Bengaluru was concerned because they already have an experience of doing this. Yeah, but with franchisees who came into this, franchise partners who came into this first time, and considering experience of us having worked in the IPL, the idea was to have a very clear path forward, saying that yes, we will make losses for a few years. Yeah, and this is how we need to sort of build the franchisees in that area. So I guess what we start with is have clear role divisions between the franchise and the league operator, and by league operator I mean Reliance as well as Star. So the primary objective of a franchise is to build a team which plays very well. Yeah, have grassroots programs which act as feeders to their team, age group teams, centers of excellence, which Bangalore is doing really well, and domestic competitions. Parallel, I mean, if you layer it along with the responsibility of the league, our responsibility is to let them manage the game, yeah, and manage the stadium. Just provide guidance till such time that they become completely capable. Manage the overall league along with the federation. Combine all the grassroots activities together. Promote, broadcast, and drive more and more consumer depth. So I guess the responsibilities are divided. Franchises work on a regional model, go deeper, and leagues operate on a national model, or the model or the areas where the sport is being viewed.
Mustafa, I think you are perfectly placed being a stakeholder as franchisee in multiple different leagues. The IPL now, ISL, I think the wrestling league, any others I'm missing? And Kabaddi. So four different leagues at four extremely different levels of development. One, can you help us compare and contrast? Two, what is your expectation in governance of these leagues? Are you literally given terms and conditions like a click-through contract and either take it or leave it? Or do you feel like you're actively and respectfully contributing as a stakeholder in the governance and the decision-making that you're a primary stakeholder in as much as players are?
I think while the cricket and the IPL involvement is just starting off, so I won't be in the best position to comment on that. But all the other leagues, we're not in the wrestling anymore, but the Kabaddi and ISL are very different models, and there's a different level of involvement that is expected of the franchisees, as well as is structured with the league owners. So with regards to Kabaddi, I think because the sport started off in such a manner where across the board, no one really perceived the sport to be the way it was going to be presented by Mashal and Star. There was a lot more of collective effort to promote the game first, and then along with that, the league. And the way Star and Mashal are doing it right now, it is a role model for everyone to kind of understand. But I think again, like she mentioned, you can't start a league trying to replicate what the IPL has done. I don't think you can start a league trying to replicate what the Kabaddi League has done either, because it was structured in a manner that was very price sensitive for team owners, and it was structured in a manner to let's see how far we can take this sport. And now with the success that they have seen over these few years, they are now looking at really globalizing the sport. So it's more collective in that sense. Yes, we compete on the mat during the season, but I think all the team owners and the league are very cognizant of the fact that they need to promote this sport, which was considered a very rural Indian sport, and make it more popular. So that agenda is very clear, and I think the manner in which they go about things is quite exciting for us to be a part of. With football, it's different because the sport is very global. Everyone has reference points to what's happening internationally, so they have a much tougher job on hand than most other leagues, because every kid can swap channels. He knows what's going on internationally. They try to compare the level of play on the pitch as opposed to what they see on TV, or have been to the best stadiums in the world to watch, or the World Cup recently. So it is definitely a tougher ask, and the business model of football world over is a lot more long drawn, and you really have to work your socks off to get to a stage where teams are self-sustaining or profitable. I mean, I think it took the J League maybe 15 or 18 years now to strike a really big television deal, where now you're seeing them being able to spend on European players coming into their system. So every league is different, every sport is different, and we have a different approach to every sport because our thought process of entering it is always different also. So we don't enter the football league with the same intent that we want to enter kabaddi or have now entered cricket. So it is different. And yes, I mean, like, just to touch on the previous point, governance plays a massive role in this, and the vision and the roadmap that the league promoters or the federations have, and the involvement of them in achieving that goal is key. And that's probably what gives us the most amount of comfort when we're taking a decision, that what is the stability of everything that is most important for this league to succeed.
And do you feel like, even if not formally, like even I think the LoDA committee at some point suggested having a seat at the table on the governing council, which the Supreme Court, obviously for conflict of interest reasons, actually pushed back. Are there enough informal mechanisms to have your voice heard in regular rulemaking which impacts you directly? So things like we've seen in the IPL, retention of players, that's never been part of the rules, but I think there was adequate collective voice that this was important to retain some element of continuity, to keep a brand going. Are there adequate, and if so, what are those adequate informal mechanisms? Are franchisees coming together and collectively in operators' councils or informal email groups or even WhatsApp groups? I don't know what they are today.
So to touch on your, actually I missed out on a point on your previous question, was about the contract that we have with with league owners. I think those are pretty standardized, because I don't think they can sit and negotiate with 12, 10 different teams on contracts. So those are pretty standardized, take it or leave it type of situations for us. But with regards to, expressing our views and expressing our wish list, I think there are enough and more opportunities at regular intervals. Some are more structured. I think the Kabaddi League is a lot more structured in terms of their regular interactions with Anupam and the entire team on what is the thought process, whether it is player retention, player policies, or even just the general rollout of the season. There's a lot more. With Srini and team, it's more one-on-one. I think that we have a direct line, and we know whenever there are concerns, whenever there are suggestions from our end, we're constantly in touch with them, and it is collective in the overall scheme of things. So I can only speak from our standpoint. I don't know how all the other teams do it, but yeah, for us, we make sure that we get our message across, because we feel that whether it's right or wrong, it's important that everyone debates upon it and comes to a consensus on how things have to be.
Aahna, if I may come back to you as someone advising both league operators as well as franchisees, how much actual negotiation is there at the front end when you're actually entering the franchise contract and perhaps negotiating with 8 or 10 or even 15 or 20, trying to become 8 or 10? And secondly, in structuring the contracts, how much room do you leave for future renegotiation of terms? So how much clarity and how much intentional disclarity do you leave, one, on the business model, two, on the ways of engagement with that franchise?
So, to be honest, I've put the practical reality in front of you. I've recently structured a deal where I kept telling them that, I said, while the whole tender process worked for IPL, wherein people were genuinely interested in coming forward and buying teams, that's not the reality as far as other sports or other leagues are concerned. So usually what you're doing is, instead of people coming forward and saying, hey, I want to buy a team, instead you're going up to people and saying, please buy a team. So when when as a league owner you're going up to people, then obviously you have to give them some negotiating power. Yes, there is not much scope for franchisees to negotiate. The templates are pretty standardized, but we do give them that leeway that, okay, if tomorrow there is a commercial opportunity that they are getting at their grassroots level or state level, given that most leagues are city-based, so then they just need to seek approval from the league owner, but yes, we will permit if it's a reasonable request. Further, of course, back in the day, 10 years ago when IPL started, nobody had thought that there will be things like live streaming. So yes, in franchisee contracts, we do make room that if tomorrow a new commercial sort of right comes through, then yes, we will speak with the franchise owner and reach a collective decision as to what the commercials regarding how we want to split the central revenue, or for that matter, any other revenue that is generated. So to that extent, yes, because you want your franchise, while yes, most people understand that you are in it for at least 5 years where you're going to be making losses, you still want to assure them that we are with you in terms of we want you to make the money, we want you here in the long term. And it all stems from the kind of rights I've also got from the federation. So if I've got an exclusive contract with the federation for 10 years, wherein I also have a right of first refusal after 10 years, then I'll be happy to give the franchisee a similar right 10 years later. That, even if tomorrow the league changes hands, as a league owner, I sell my league to anybody else, you will still, as a team owner, have the right of first refusal to own a team in that league. So I think that's a fair game where you're thinking about the franchisee owners and not being completely selfish. To that extent, there is room for negotiation in terms of franchise owners, but otherwise it's a pretty standard.
And how open-eyed are franchisees going into this? I mean, I've seen many contracts where it just commits to holding the first 2 seasons of the league, and the 3rd season is no guarantee that it will even be held. So, is that a recognition of volatility, and is that adequate, from a lawyer speak, is that adequate notice of the risks that you're getting into, that season 3 may not even happen because the contract is drafted?
I guess the trend that we've seen, yes, everybody's aware of that risk that exists. Also, the unfortunate reality is that we don't give so much weightage to contracts, and seen most first seasons, or for that matter, even second seasons, have gone ahead without actually signing a contract. So, when I don't have a legally binding contract, how much can I force them to actually be on board? Or for that matter, if somebody is going to not pay me the franchise fee for 2 years, do I really want them to be there for the 3rd season? That is also a question, just because I want to show a face that XYZ owns a team in my league. So it goes both ways. I mean, of course, it's a reality given that leagues have failed over the last half a decade. But also that if somebody is not paying me the money and is not signed a contract, I'm happy to let you go as well, whichever way.
Just to say that because of the number of leagues that we're in, every proposal kind of lands on our table, assuming that we will take it up. But when there's so much room for negotiation in contract, then that's for me a big red flag, because that means that the same is happening with all the 6 to 8 or 10 owners. So from the franchise fee to the terms and conditions, everything can be discussed. Then for me that's a straight no on entering that league. So it is very important on how well those contracts are structured for us to get comfort that there is a sense of professionalism in
they're adequately thought through already before they come to you. It's not a starting point of a negotiation. And Chaitanya, just coming there, as a broadcaster, looking at various proposals, I'm sure your position is no different from Mustafa. Every single league is probably landing on your desk as well. You have to make a decision. Do I get in before this starts and get in at ground level, or am I willing to wait to see what does season 4 look like? How does that analysis play out? And many are not reaching season 4, right? But if something reaches season 4, perhaps there is something there. But at that point, probably the value is also higher for you to enter. So where does your decision making stand there, and what is the lens you put on it, saying, okay, this looks like at the front end probably has a 20 or 30 year horizon, or is that not even something that we have metrics yet for?
It's a bit of a portfolio approach, is what I'd say. That there will be certain properties in your portfolio that are assured winners in terms of at least consumer acceptance. And then, cricket, for example, a lot of cricket tends to be in that space. And hence, the business challenge there is for us to just build adequate revenue models around it, consumption and revenue models. Then there are a bunch of assets where we have strong belief that these will grow in terms of consumer acceptance as well as revenues over a period of time. And then there will be a bunch of assets which are pretty high risk, right? But this is a portfolio approach, and hence we spread our investments in such a way that we are balancing our risk and reward ratios across the entire portfolio. What it also means is that being a portfolio is going to be a finite set of properties. we are not in a position to get into 50 different properties and do justice to all of them. Not because the 50 properties are not good enough, but simply because we will have our own limitations of how much we can do and how many properties we can really grow in this country. So I think that's where we tend to that's how we tend to view it as a portfolio. And really, the longer the last set of assets, right, where we are saying that these are riskier but are available today, maybe at lower values and potentially could be multi-baggers in the next 10 years, is where then we will want to try and do longer term deals, etc. Or at least ensure that we have an ability to get the upside if things turn positive. But that's how we tend to look at it.
And how much will you look at that Kabaddi model again? We had Mr. Jacob yesterday saying that part of the reason you went in so strong with Kabaddi was there was a different vision from the founders' vision, and the belief was even greater than the founders, which is quite a reasonably rare thing to have, because most founders are starting expecting their vision to be larger. But do you see that model replicating, where there's also the league operator and the broadcaster becoming, in some sense, unified in many ways, which also not only gives control, but that level of certainty and control of the outcomes and the way a league is operated, the quality at which it's operated, like even the color of the match that you put out, the way that it's repackaged, that is clearly has broadcast implications. So do you see that model continuing on certain sports? Is it something we'd likely to see even more, from carrier to rights fee payer to actually league operator or quasi-league operator? Is that a trend you're...
So it's a very resource-heavy approach, because a lot of our organizational bandwidth, which is otherwise mainly designed for broadcast of live sports, is then diverted into
production.
Not just production, but also running of leagues, operational aspects of leagues, dealing with franchisees. So it's a very resource-heavy side of our business. I don't think it's possible for us to extend that kind of an approach to too many different properties. My sense currently is that we have a couple of investments in that space. I don't see that model being extended in the near term, at least.
Interesting. Mustafa, back to you and your relationship with your athletes. Your biggest asset, besides intellectual property, both of those you're able to utilize for a few weeks in a year. You have probably less than 20% control over their schedules, their training. How much does this concern you as your number one, or at most your number two asset, being completely outside your control except when in your control?
Yeah, so that is, again, a challenge we face, varying from league to league. With football, we have our players for almost 11 months of the year, so we have more control over them, as with regards to sponsor engagements and activations, etc. Yes, with Kabaddi, it's literally during the season and a little bit before, and with cricket, it's literally close to nothing. So yes, it is a challenge, but again, we address every issue respective to the sport and what we can do and cannot do to build our brand value and our equity in the market. So it's about packaging, and it's about understanding what is going to work, or at least trying to understand what is going to work and attempting that. We don't always get it right, so we have to course correct and figure out what we need to do to get more and more commercially viable.
One is commercial and also operational. So I think there's enough statistics now to show the number of Kabaddi players going back to services, to whatever their employment, and not having adequate medical care and attention, and the number that are injured 60 days after the PKL is significantly large, and the person you've invested in may not be back in your team the next season. So how much actual operational continuity is there in athlete care?
So the thing is that these leagues and Kabaddi in specific has not evolved in all facets, right? I mean, the definition of success is still very open for me. I'm not going to go out there and say that it's a successful league, because there are many other components that are not even being addressed. There is no pyramid system with any of the franchisees. I mean, we're in 1 year, but there have been others that have been there for 4-5 seasons. So that's not done yet. We're not looking at the entire ecosystem for Kabaddi. It was started off with it being 3-4 weeks of the year. Now it has progressed to 13 weeks. But there is a lot more that has to happen, and it's going to be a process. So I think everyone has to be patient and understand what exactly they want to achieve out of it and work towards it. But like you rightly said, if we are going to be spending over 1 crore on a player, we need to know that he is in the right space, in the right training program, in everything that is going to result in him being at peak performance when the season starts, which at this point of time is not the case. But yes, as the whole ecosystem falls into place, that's how we would like to work with Kabaddi, especially with football. It's pretty straightforward. We have the players. It's very easy because you replicate the global model. You've done most of our contracts, so you know that we have them and we can monitor every aspect of their schedule.
Srini, I think Mustafa is very kind to say you have an extremely difficult job, and while you have acknowledged very, very difficult job, how much time and space do you even have to think about legacy? Which is, are there enough academies being built? Are there enough junior programs, junior ISL, other things like that? How front and center can it be when there's a very, very desperate, urgent need to figure out the core business model? And how do these things keep you up at night, or are there other things? I'm sure you're kept up at night anyway.
No, absolutely, Nandan. When we started, and John's here, and he remembers the late nights that we spent when we started. So again, we have experience of working along with you on the IPL as well as the ISL. So joining ISL and starting to work on it was pretty much an Aayog. So yes, the first year was went by just ensure that it gets over.
It done.
Yeah, just get it done. Millions of learnings which we implemented in season 2, and then going forward. So right now, I guess what we are working, our primary objective is sustainability of franchisees. Yeah, because if there's no franchisee, there's no league. Yeah, so primary objective is to do that, and that's what we're working with each and every franchise, because each of them have their own individual problems depending on the catchment that they're in. For example, a problem that Kerala might face is very different from a problem that Delhi might face. Yeah, Kerala has a problem of plenty. I mean, not what's happening in Kerala right now, but the fans are extremely passionate. Yeah, Delhi is very different. Bengaluru is very different. Bengaluru and Kerala are right on top. So yes, we as Mustafa mentioned, we have one-on-one interactions with clubs and focus primarily on sustainability, growing the fan base, which we work with the franchise partners on that. Yeah, how to ensure that you create buzz before the tournament, and now that the tournament is much longer, the league is much longer, how do you keep the buzz alive? In terms of legacy, like you mentioned, when we started in season 1, we part of our franchise agreement says that each club needs to have an academy, and that's extremely important for growth. So what do you expect a franchise partner to do? Run a football team or build an academy first. So as Reliance, we said we'll take the first step. So we said we'll build an academy. Okay, what does it take to build an academy? First, build a structure. So we said, okay, let's put together an academy. It's called Reliance Foundation Young Champs. We don't talk too much about it till, So what we did was we scouted a lot of kids only from the age 8 catchment areas that we had in season 1, and we took about 23 kids in season 1, about 18 in season 2, and so over the last 4 years we have about 63 in the academy. We spend a lot of money on that. They go for overseas, they study in the Reliance school, they go for overseas tours, play Premier League clubs in their age group, they played La Liga clubs, they performed very well against Real Madrid and Southampton, who have great structures. We organize exposure tours for them. This year probably going to be Germany, and this is the legacy that we're talking about. We set an example for to at least build a template or a model for franchise partners to replicate. I mean, for some of them, for people like Bengaluru, it will be easier because they are in that business, and for some it might be difficult. But at least set a template and ensure that this is the way forward. Because what is the biggest cost in a game like football? It's players, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've seen that with the example of David Beckham, Gary Neville. They came from the academy. So building that base right at the beginning and ensure that you have a good talent pool is the key. And we've started by setting the example ourselves.
Great. Desh, I'll come to you. Are there internationally recognized models like training compensation, which in some sense takes the pressure off the franchisee, but actually sets up structures where people who commit to talent and develop it are going to get compensated in the long run? Because we see a lot of issues with private academies not even being able to make it sustainable. Athletes finding it even difficult to pay maybe even 6,000-7,000 rupees a month. And that's not a joke, that's actually a significant figure for a lot of people. Are there models which are time appropriate for India and others which we can look at in 5 or 10 years?
So again, I think because this is a session on leagues, I think what you're seeing, if you look at the North American model, it's very well set out. You have a very robust collegiate system where you have all your amateur athletes who aspire to be scholarship athletes. And whether or not they decide to be amateurs or professionals, there's an entire farming system, a training development program, which is completely lacking in India as of now for various reasons. And of course, will you run a franchise or will you run an academy? So unless you have someone with a long-term vision, and promoters of leagues are the ones who actually have to lead by example. And it's not really possible. I was listening to all the panelists here, and I wish I was still practicing because 2 years back when I was representing clients, apart from the gold standard of these 3 or 4 leagues, everything was fair game. I mean, if you're looking at contracts, we had to negotiate everything. You're talking about the term. We did not have people who were willing to sign on for more than a year. There's only a limited pool of people who are willing to invest in leagues. And when you get beyond these 3 or 4 leagues, then you have people who are first-time investors who are not able to actually take active part in the development of the league. So you have promoters who actually have to guarantee the first 2 seasons running operations, running every component. There's no home away, there's no role for the promoter but to literally find a celebrity and be on TV and pay the franchise fee. There are no sponsors. I mean, if you're talking about title sponsors, I think I was reading a study. More state premier leagues for cricket have title sponsors than central leagues outside of the 5 or 6 sports. So, because the league system is so underdeveloped, and because these are really tournaments and not leagues, the whole concept of a minor league system we're pretty far from it. To ISL's credit, they're making a fair attempt at building an academy. Because if you don't have an academy, you're always going to have a shortage of local talent, a shortage of talent being developed that can actually play at the professional level, and you will never build an aspiration program for kids who will have 7,000 to 10,000 positions which they can occupy, like in football, like the pyramid scheme in the UK, in minor league baseball, in MLB in North America, and other such leagues. So until you have that system, and either the promoter has to take that role, or they have to mandate the franchises to take that role. Federation, unfortunately, as of now, are not completely in sync with league promoters, and I think that interaction needs to increase, where the development is overall governed by the federation, but mandated by the league promoters. I think that is the only way we're going to see a broadening of the talent pool and having careers for athletes, not just the superstars.
Great. I think we'll just end on one note. If you had a wish list of 2 things you'd like to see in the next 5 years on leagues, be it legal, operational, the way we do things, Aahna, we'll start with you and go down the line.
I think people need to understand that the moment they understand that everything cannot be an IPL and move away from that whole model, what I'd like to see is somebody coming up with a new concept of a league. I mean, it's great you're doing a tournament, but sort of city-based model, maybe corporates getting together. So that is something that I'd like to see in the immediate future, corporates getting together. Of course, 5 years from now, grassroots, people concentrating on grassroots and grassroots sport really developing in the country to understand, because at this point of time, there's RFYS and there are a couple of other people who are doing stuff for grassroots sport. But those kids are really not coming to the limelight or sort of, being picked up. It's so easy for them. If you really concentrate on that, for universities to come forward, hire them, take them on scholarship abroad and things like that. For those things to start off in 5 years from now, that's probably what I would.
I think from a business of leagues point of view, there is no form of government support right now. It's completely driven by private enterprise. And I think it's important to recognize the contribution to the nation and to sport for India that these private leagues are doing. And which is why I think the government needs to play a larger role in enabling the growth of these leagues, whether it is through sources of funding, whether it is through taxation policy, whether it is through encouragement and investment in infrastructure. I think that level of support is really, really required for the leagues to grow and eventually for sports to grow.
Desh?
Again, I think this is just building on my last part. Minor leagues, you have to have a farming system. Until you do that, sport can never become broad-based.
So, I think you should have clarified this before, but what is a league? We finished this discussion. We have this discussion all the time, saying a league is a format where clubs or franchises play each other home and away.
Would keep it simple, better governance and better roadmap planning for us, especially as team owners, because I think that's what's going to set the difference, and we don't really need to reinvent too much. Every model is available globally. We just need to know what's going to work for us as India and the respective sport that we're looking at.
Fantastic. I think I'm well out of time. I know there are going to be people with questions, but I will encourage you to ask them at lunch because we have a wonderful panel coming after this. But thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. And I just have one thing I wanted to say. We've been able to have this lovely opportunity to have this event completely free of cost to all of you. If you believe that you would have been willing to pay a fee to attend this, I would strongly encourage you to pay that fee and as a donation to the Chief Minister's Relief Fund for Kerala or Karnataka as you choose. So please take that as
Thank you.